Hello, it's the Eurogamer.net podcast, number 95. I'm Tom Champion, and with me today, Tom Bramwell.
Hello.
Hello, Tom.
This is something new for us, isn't it?
This is because that is it. There are no more people.
We've dramatically reduced headcount.
I like to think we've really trimmed the fat.
That's very charitable of you.
And you're left with the prime cuts. There is no offal in this week's podcast.
It's pretty awful by my reckoning.
Just waffle. No offal, just waffle.
Dear God.
It's the new tagline for the podcast. Yes, so it's just two of us. We're going to be talking this week about the PlayStation Vita, which is out now in Japan and due for release next month, I believe.
February 22nd, yes.
Everywhere else. Is that in America?
It's not out in America yet. It'll be out in America at the same time, I think.
Well, there you go. But you've had a Vita over Christmas.
Yes. I in classic Bramwell fashion realised there was a new console coming out, so spent an extraordinary, stupid amount of money getting one.
Yeah.
In advance of everyone else. So I got mine on Christmas Eve, in fact, and I've been playing it ever since.
Wonderful. Well, there you go. We've got a whole bunch of questions, reader questions to go through.
Probably more readers than listeners.
I would say so, yes. A lot of people when asked to submit their questions, simply responded,
What is a podcast?
A Eurogamer podcast. What on earth is that? But before we get into that, how have you been getting on with the unit? I
really like it. I think it's probably the most powerful and versatile gaming handheld that I've ever had, or that I've ever encountered. The sheer range of control options that it has, coupled with the really powerful processor and graphics capability, and the really luscious screen. I mean, the screen is about the size of an entire iPhone unit. Basically, if you overlay, I will actually do this for you now, Tom. If
this
you
is
put
remarkable.
An iPhone on top of the Vita, it obscures just about the screen. It's incredible.
There you go.
So when it comes to playing things like your classic home console experiences like Uncharted or Katamari Damacy, or things that you would traditionally not be able to get going on a handheld because it didn't have enough analog sticks or it didn't have graphical power, they are now the sorts of things you can play on the train.
There you go.
And that is, for me, that's actually what I wanted from the original PlayStation Portable. So to see it realised a mere 7 years later is very gratifying. I recognise though that the commercial fortunes of the unit may be somewhat different to its critical ones.
Well, we shall see.
We shall get to that though.
Yes, I'm sure we will at some point. But we should get on with the reader questions, I guess, since I've got a whole A4 sheet worth of those.
Yeah.
So first question, which just came up 2 or 3 times actually, but the two people I recall asking were Erigol and FZ_Boogaloo. And they ask, is it possible to tether the Vita to an iPhone to use the 3G from that? Obviously there's 2 models of
you can get a Wi-Fi version of Vita, and you can get a 3G version, which obviously also has Wi-Fi, but has a pay-as-you-go 3G SIM card. I think it has to be a prepaid jobby. I don't think there are contracts available. That may actually not. I saw something about how you can only do it as prepaid in Japan and in America. I assume that's the same situation here. Anyway, in answer to their question, yes, you can. I tried this the other day while I was on a train, in fact. And initially, in classic Sony fashion, it didn't work because it didn't like the fact that there was an apostrophe in the SSID of my iPhone. So my iPhone appeared on the Vita as Tom Bramwell 'S iPhone. And it complained about there being an invalid character in the name. So I went into, if you go to General About on your iPhone, or if you use iTunes, you can rename your iPhone to something else. I renamed it to No Apostrophes iPhone, and it was fine. So I sat and browsed the internet on the train using it just as you would with a laptop or anything else. And I expect that since it works for that, it will work fine for Android or any other device you have that has mobile connectivity.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So you don't need to buy the 3G version. Do you think the 3G
version of Vita will stick around? It seems.
I don't know. I imagine that it will probably be one of those survival of the fittest situations, won't it? Where they just... I mean, Sony has this classic thing of relaunching its systems with new models and different hard drive capacities and stuff like that annually. So I imagine if one doesn't sell, then it will just focus on the one that does.
Why would you make use of the 3G on a regular basis?
Well, the Vita has a bunch of different features that allow it to sort of access the internet or rely on the internet. So obviously you've got basic stuff like web browser, which, you know, if people are using it effectively as a kind of smartphone on the go sort of thing for just accessing the internet would be very useful. It has a Twitter application, so good news for Johnny Minkley there. It has other stuff like location-based services like this application called Near, which it uses to... Near, incidentally, is a name for a product, especially with its lowercase n. Reminds me of the 30 Rock joke about the film called The Rural Juror, which no one can really pronounce and looks terrible when written down. But anyway, it's a thing where you can locate people near you who are using Vita, and you can add them to your friends list, or you can compete against their scores, and you can gain like downloadable content through that. So it's kind of like Street Pass in a way for the 3DS, but with a sort of Sony spin on it. So it's got a bunch of things like that, and you know you can do those obviously on Wi-Fi in your workplace or at home or whatever. But once you get out on a train, you need a bit of the old mobile connectivity.
Fair enough.
So yeah, that's basically it. Oh, and I assume that there will be some multiplayer functionality that maybe uses 3G. I mean, that seems like a logical thing, but I've not encountered any of that in the games that I've been playing yet, except for stuff related to Nier.
Right. Well, tally-ho. Let's bound on to question 2. This was from AWJ Smith. He wants to know what the other functions of the machine are like, the music player, etc. Does it have apps like tablets?
Yes, so it does have apps like tablets. It has an app section on the PlayStation Store where at the moment you can only get the, unless they've updated it in the last week, the Twitter application, which is free, and there's also there's a couple of other Japanese-specific things. The stuff that's bundled on the Vita itself, you've got traditional things you'd expect, like a music player, photo viewer, which couples to the cameras on the front and the rear, and there's also a video player. You need to use the content manager software on the Vita itself to copy stuff between PC and Vita, so you can't just plug it in via USB and use Windows Explorer. And also it doesn't like MacBooks as far as I can tell.
Great.
But you can install the content manager assistant on your PC, which allows you...
Why can't you just drag and drop stuff?
Which allows you to customize where you can grab files from on your PC, because this is how computers should work. But it does work. If you basically go on your computer and say, "This is where my music is, this is where my videos are, this is where my photos are," then it can copy stuff back and forth using the Vita. And it can do that. I don't know if it can do it wirelessly. I didn't try that. I only did it via USB, and it was glacially slow. But I was able to copy an album onto it, and the music player works like you'd expect. You can have music on in the background. Can
you do that while you're playing games?
Yes, it seems so. You can hit the PlayStation button at any time to go back to the sort of swishy panes sort of system menu to switch back to the music player and change music or turn it off or whatever, whatever application you're in. And whilst some applications on Vita don't like running at the same time as others, so for example, you can't have two games running at the same time, and weirdly you can't have an internet browser running at the same time as a game. You can have the music player at the same time as a game, and the photo view is quite nice. And actually something I discovered while playing around with this, as anyone who's following me on Twitter yesterday probably noticed, is that you can screenshot anything on the Vita by hitting the PlayStation and the start button at the same time, which is pretty handy if you're a game reviewer, although not really that handy if you only notice it when you've done 2.5 game reviews already. So it's a bit of a shame. So it does have applications. It will have more, presumably, and they're all right.
All right. Sweet. Bracken 3000 wants to know...
These are some fine usernames. I really like them.
The next one's absurd, the one after this.
Yeah.
Has anyone heard what the browser would be like on the Vita? Looking at YouTube, checking mail... and some websites didn't work, as well as the memory being very small on the PSP. I can't find any details of if the Vita will improve on this.
Okay, so the Vita browser is based on the same technology as the PlayStation 3 browser, but it's slightly better. The good news, obviously, Eurogamer works. We made sure of that, mainly because we forced it to use the the mobile version of the site. Although it's a mobile device, get over it. YouTube doesn't work. It complains about an invalid Flash version, so that's a shame. Gmail is vaguely usable, but it doesn't understand the way it nests windows within Windows. So when you have an email in Gmail and you scroll down, it doesn't let you do that because it doesn't understand how to differentiate between the areas that you're dragging around.
Right. Okay.
So you can use it, but you can't read emails over a certain length, which is great. Just be brief with people. What else did I try? IGN, unusable. BBC News works fine. So it's basically not really as good as Android or iOS browsers for mobile browsing. So you're probably going to still stick using a smartphone when you're on a train or something.
Right.
But it's good enough if you're just lying in bed or on the couch, you're too lazy to get up and you want to check a football score or something.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think it's going to be a particularly good web browsing device, to be honest.
Oh, poor Bracken. Okay, moving on. So next question is from Gareth Williams.
Okay.
Crazy username. Oh, we like Gareth. Hi, Gareth.
Hi, Gareth.
By the way. Thank you for listening. Like some other folks I know, I love the idea of the technology, but I'm not itching to go out and buy it, as although the launch-up is fantastic. The launch lineup, sorry. There's nothing that grabs me. Am I right in waiting? Also, how can I justify the purchase to my wife? What does it do for her?
I will answer that.
I hesitate to ask this question.
I will answer that two-part question in two parts. I think if the experience of the Nintendo 3DS taught us anything, it's that you should wait for the games that you want. But I think that's been true of consoles forever. So just use your common sense, Gareth. Wait until you see the games that you want, try them. If the price is an issue for you, and then make a decision based on that. The games probably for a gamer like me who is happy to play stuff like Uncharted, Ridge Racer. I've been caning through as many of the Japanese games as I can get my hands on. I'm really enjoying it. I just like having new technology at my fingertips, and I find that exciting. So for me, it probably is worth it. But I fully recognise that for a lot of people, you need a more powerful reason to do it.
Yeah.
Other people's mileage will vary. Hopefully, the European launch will be a slightly different situation because you will also have Wipeout there, Motorstorm RC, Gravity Rush will be finished by then, etc. Hopefully, those games will be great as well. In terms of justifying it to your wife, Gareth,
maybe she likes Uncharted.
Yeah, I really don't know. Uncharted is very good actually. I enjoyed the mixture of gameplay styles. It was broader than Uncharted 3 in that respect, and the story was pretty well told.
Yeah.
Although some of the dialogue was a bit cheesy at times compared to the stuff that Naughty Dog turns out. But it's not exactly. And actually, my girlfriend was quite happy watching me play Uncharted over my shoulder, or at least that was what she told me, and indeed herself, I imagine. So
I am having fun.
Yeah. I don't know. Just do what usually works. I imagine you've bought expensive devices before and gone away with it. Try that.
Maybe she's away for a weekend, just go out and buy one. Pretend it's always been there.
Just go into her room and take her most expensive and treasured thing, sell it, and then buy a Vita.
She'll thank you in the long run.
Yeah. You're married, right? Through thick and thin.
What's mine is yours. Anyway, Reg McFly. I'm intrigued as to its portability. Has anyone in Ye EG office carried it around for a day / to the shops, etc.?
Well, I took my PlayStation Vita on an all expenses paid trip to London recently. I've been carrying it around for weeks. It's great for like big jacket pocket. So during winter it's fine because us burly men have deep pockets and it's suitable for that. It's actually quite sturdy. I think it's got the analog sticks, but they're actually pretty well integrated. They're not going to snap off. Everything else is pretty discreet on both ends of it, so it's unlikely that you're going to do any particular damage to it in your pocket, as long as you don't throw your keys in there as well, or a bear or something like that. You probably want to get a case for it because similar to your smartphones and tablets and whatever, it's got a big screen and as robust as those things are, they don't tend to do terribly well if you do throw things at them. So just exercise some common sense. But it's perfectly portable. I mean, it weighs less than it's just over half a pound, so about 260 something grams, which is nothing. No. It's basically the same weight as a smartphone, which is mental.
That is crazy.
So there's no issues in terms of it's not like carrying a laptop around in your jacket pocket. The only thing I'd say is that while it has a screen lock similar to phones, so if someone does nick it, they're not going to be able to break into it terribly easily. Or it does that thing where it wipes your details off it if you input the wrong code a few times. It is obviously far more stealable than a phone because it's not bound to your SIM card and contract, and you can't use remote location stuff to find it and all the rest of it. And you probably, and because it's not centralised in terms of how it's distributed, you probably don't have a serial number for it and stuff. So when you get it out on the train or in public or whatever,
you're a target.
You're advertising the fact that you're holding something that costs about 250 quid, and smart criminals are probably just going to go up to people and just nick them. So like anything, it's portable, but use your common sense.
Tether it to your wrist.
It does have, actually, on that note, the same sort of thing as the PSP, the little strap thing. I think that's because, so it's got the little bit where you can insert a wrist strap. I think that's because of something like that, and also in Japan I know that those, adorning your phone with little tchotchkes and stuff is quite popular. So
I think they wear it around their necks.
Like bling? No, because they're at the bottom rather than the top, so it wouldn't really work. You could wear it like that. It'd be quite unwieldy, but it would be a good way because you could just lift it up and look at it. So it's like reading glasses.
It's a marketing opportunity for Sony. Get that guy
maybe when they
from that rap group who wears the clocks around his neck. Replace that with a Sony Vita. You got a marketing campaign there. Thank me later. Sony.
A lot later.
Yeah, you listening? No, you're not listening.
No. And also, it doesn't come with a case or a cleaning cloth, which is a bit of a shame. So you're okay if you've got glasses and you have something else to store it in, but otherwise you have to buy that crap separately.
Well, shit. 44 Fun. He wants to know how much of a grind is the account swapping? Will Digital Foundry look at some PSP/PS1 game emulation?
So account swapping is a total ball ache. Your balls will ache if you need to swap your account.
You might be doing it wrong.
You need to reset the entire device to set up a new account because you can only have one PlayStation Network /user account associated with the Vita, which is obviously again similar to a smartphone rather than a home computer or a home console. But that's obviously wound some people up because it is primarily a gaming device rather than a personal phone or whatever. I haven't bothered to reset ours to try this out because I'm using it, and we'll probably not bother resetting it to Europe because we'll just use it as our Japanese Vita. So I can't tell you, but I can tell you that it's sufficiently off-putting that most people won't want to do it.
Right.
It's setting up a Japanese account isn't terribly difficult, and if you can buy prepaid PSN store credit for the Japanese store online and actually get the codes emailed to you. So that's an easy way to buy stuff off the store even if you don't have a Japanese credit card, which I imagine most people don't. But you probably want to get the European one, or at least have it set up for Europe once Europe happens. So yeah, account swapping is going to be a total bollock. In terms of the Digital Foundry thing, they're going to look at like all sorts of aspects. They've got 2 Vitas.
Wow!
At the moment, and they're strapping together, making them fight, and they're doing all sorts of crazy battery tests, and they've been sending me pictures and reports on their incredible experiments. It's like honestly, the lab is buzzing. So anything you want to cover, anything that anyone listening wants them to cover, they should just tweet at digital_foundry. I'm not going to do a Microsoft tweet choir version of that, but I've mentioned the emulation thing to Rich Ledbetter already, so they'll look at that when they get a chance.
Fantastic.
On that note, though, I haven't been able to find any emulated PlayStation 1 or PSP games on the store, and I haven't bothered to try, or rather I haven't had the time to try the process of trying to port your PSP games over, because I imagine that's just going to be enough of a faff in Europe in English, so I imagine what it's going to be like in Japanese.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Dean Rhodes Brandon.
Gotta love the double barrel name there.
Sounds like that's a name from a lead singer of a band, I'm sure. How is the UI? Looking at videos, it seems very smooth and fast. Is this the case for you guys?
Yes. It's incredibly fast. Task switching takes no time at all. There's no jerking or lagging. The touch screen is very responsive, multi-touch. The rear panel also seems to be multi-touch. It's fantastic. Like I know that the cross-media bar, bless it, was. I actually think the cross-media bar has weathered the test of time relatively well. Compared to, say, the Xbox interface, which is continually redesigned, and they have great different difficulties with the sheer volumes of content. If you have an awful lot of stuff on your PlayStation 3, then it can be a little bit tricky, but it's generally quite logical. The new Vita system is much more like a smartphone, so you have screens which are full of little blobs, each one representing an application of some sort. And the more applications you have, the more of these screens you have, and you swipe through them vertically. When you have applications active, you swipe horizontally to switch between the sort of the status of them, and then you can click on them to load them up into the foreground. And the method of closing applications is you sort of peel them down. So like the top right corner, you grab it with your finger and push it down, and sort of peel the whole screen off, and it closes, and that's quite nice. And there's also activities that are done in the background are done. You know how the draw thing works on Android and iPhone, where you sort of pull down from the top of the screen?
Yes.
Not like that. There's a little bubble in the top right, usually with like an ellipsis sort of thing, and you hit that, and it brings down a little sort of draw menu and shows you processes that are ongoing or recently completed. So trophies you've unlocked, games you've downloaded, that sort of thing. And works jolly nice.
Well, there you go. Gregory Greg, so good they named him twice. Does the Vita make any noises like the PS3/PSP, or does it just run smoothly like an iPhone? And also, how fast is the loading? Is it more or less than 30 seconds?
When he says noises, do you suppose he means the classic PlayStation style startup noise?
Why not? Or the grinding,
the grinding of the gears.
The grinding of the
certainly
mechanical...
grinding my gears. It doesn't make sweet music, although it does have sweet menu music that plays the whole time until you get bored and turn it off in the options. And it makes absolutely no noise at all. Like, I will actually demonstrate this to people by turning it on.
Wow, it's deafening. Sorry about that.
Sorry, I did hit the microphone there, which may give people the wrong impression. It's now on. I'm flicking through menus and stuff.
There you go. All I can hear is you tapping on the screen.
Yeah, it's silent. It's absolutely silent. And it takes absolutely no time at all to come up.
Bam. There it is.
So, in terms of loading games, well, let's test the theory. I imagine there will be more specific
this is classic podcasting.
This is, yeah. I'm going to load Ridge Racer, so I'll click the little Ridge Racer icon, and I click the start button. Now, is anyone timing this?
No, I'm
James
not
watching.
James is nodded off. Producer James.
Right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
classic.
6.
We don't get nominated for an award this year.
8, 9, 10. Oh, we got a thing. I've lost count.
13.
Right.
14.
Come on, Ridge Racer. Come on.
16.
Namco.
18.
Come on, Access.
19. 20. 21. 22.
Come on, I thought this was less than 30.
I'm getting bored. 25.
Oh,
he said
there it is. And we're on the main menu. So yeah, it does take a little while to load them the first time, but you'll notice that when I load it back up now, I'm now back on that screen immediately. Right, yeah, and if I hit the PlayStation button and go back to the main menu and start swishing around and doing other shit, like if I load up the Twitter application, it's like, oh look, there's a tweet. But then I go straight back to the game and I'm back on the menu in a second. So it is very fast once a game is actually loaded to pull it back from suspend.
Okay, good stuff. Adam Carr. I'm really interested in the remote play aspect. How does it compare to the PSP's attempt? And what PS3 games are compatible?
I can't actually help Terry here because I haven't had a chance to try this much. I did set it up with remote play to the PS3 and played around with the XMB for a bit, but I haven't tried any games. So I'm afraid I can't answer that question. Sorry, Adam. It looked the same from what I saw.
Well, there you go. Simon Stirrett. This is another.
It's a similar question,
web browser question. He's asked specifically about HTML5 videos.
So I think it's sufficiently different to answer. So he wanted to know if the web browser's up to scratch, and as you say about HTML5 videos, HTML5 video doesn't work, which is very disappointing, frankly. Like even Eurogamer's HTML5 video viewer doesn't work. But if you go to a video on Eurogamer, there is a link under each video that says "doesn't work, try this alternate link," and if you click that, it downloads the video, and you can do that on Vita. If you can actually download files on Vita, so you can download a video, it dumps it in your video folder, and then you just go to the video player to watch it. So I was able to watch any trailer that we posted yesterday quite easily, which was cool. The download in the background stuff's pretty sweet. The only thing that annoyed me is that it doesn't do it while the Vita is suspended. So if the power save kicks in and it goes to suspend, then it just stops and it has to resume, which can be a problem if you're using a site that doesn't support resumed downloads, so you end up having to download something huge again. This is particularly irritating with the Japanese PlayStation Store, I've discovered, because the Vita, with its current firmware, doesn't allow you to turn off the power save auto screen turn off thing. So at the maximum interval you can set it to is 5 minutes. So you sort of have to sit there poking it to keep the download alive. I think that's quite shocking, but I imagine that they will very quickly patch that because it's meant to.
Yes, that's quite annoying. Louis P. I can't tell if this is a serious question. Has it got enough input methods?
I'm not actually aware of any input methods that are not supported by the Vita.
Oh, well, someone on Twitter pointed out, no, it doesn't have any sort of nasal operation.
I'm fairly sure that it is, it's responsive to semaphore, for example, and virtually anything else you throw at it. I mean, it's when it was announced, the fact that it has, I mean, let's go around it. It's got 2 shoulder buttons, D-pad, 2 analog sticks, PlayStation button, start and select, face buttons, front and rear cameras, dedicated volume controls, front and rear touch screens, an accelerometer or gyroscope or whatever it is, I'm too stupid to know, headphone slot, dedicated USB power slot, although it's proprietary, of course, rather than micro USB. It's got a slot for the game cards, it's got a slot for the proprietary Sony memory card, obviously, and if you have the 3G version, it will have a 3G slot. So it's got all of that stuff. After that, you're like, and when it was announced, we were all like, so you basically just stuck everything you could possibly think of on it. And to some extent, that's true, but it does mean that developers can make games that use any combination of these aspects. And certainly, the early examples suggest that there's a lot of creativity that can be unlocked by that. I mean, Little Deviants, the minigame compilation sort of thing, the obligatory minigame compilation, is actually really good. It's designed by Big Studios in the UK. But one of the reasons it's good is that it's such a diverse collection of activities. You'll start off playing something that's quite akin to an iPhone game, one of those ones where you have to dodge stuff by moving the device left and right. Yeah, okay. And then you'll be playing something that's more like Marble Madness or Mercury, one of those games where you have to move an object around on a surface by letting it roll and then sort of counterbalancing it. And then you'll be playing something that uses the triggers or something that uses the augmented reality cameras, so you're shooting objects that are swirling around you in your office. And then you'll be using rear touch to push up the surface underneath an object, or you'll be pushing down or whatever, or pinching. There's just so much variety. So yeah, it's got enough input methods for people to do a whole bunch of different stuff, which is pretty cool.
Jolly good. There's a few questions now which I don't think we can really expect definitive answers from you. It's kind of more stuff that you might want to speculate on.
Yeah.
But R Starting wants to know, how can the Vita compete with iOS?
Yes. So, I suppose it's literally wider and taller than an iPhone. So presumably it could just sit on it until it can't breathe.
Could have it in a fight.
Yeah.
Probably.
But we can actually do this now. Cause I want my
smash him. Smash him. Let's smash.
I don't know if that's really a bad way to do things. I said this in my review of the Vita, but I think they need to, or I would really like to see them open it up so that small-time developers can do stuff for it independently, and then just put it through an approval process, rather than their thing of constantly trying to incubate everything themselves with like PlayStation Minis and stuff, because it just allows people to experiment and play around. And you get some crap games, but just reject them. If you don't think it's up to snuff, just say no. But by allowing a whole bunch of people to easily develop your thing, rather than making it a closed system, you guarantee that you're going to end up with far, far more good things on your machine. And I think, but I think generally it depends what he means by compete with iOS, because in terms of volume of games, it simply can't. Like the install-based mathematics are just ridiculous. There are like a bajillion iPhones. That's an official number, and there are approximately 0 Vitas in the UK at least, and something more like 10 in Japan, or whatever number it was that they managed to sell. So it just doesn't add up for that sort of thing. But I do think in terms of game quality and originality, it can compete, because it's going to have amazing. Fuck off.
Sales director Dan Robinson.
Brilliant work from sales director Dan Robinson there, interrupting the podcast. That's a first, isn't it?
Apart from the first since the cleaner in the last podcast.
Okay. So yeah, most of the games that are going to be made for Vita are going to be made by core games publishers, right? Who it's fair to say are quite conservative in the way that they choose projects. So on existing consoles, that tends to result in games with which have a sort of a dearth of originality and creativity and blah blah blah. But Vita has so many different control methods that hopefully it will inspire the teams within those companies to do different things quite readily. So that may help, but generally I think that, as with all previous handhelds, the impetus is going to be on Sony as the platform holder to produce the best games internally, unless it can somehow amass such a huge install base that it's unavoidable, or unless they open it up to indie developers to just make stuff themselves. So I don't think it can really compete with iOS in the way that I imagine his question is conceived, but it can certainly have lots of good games on it.
Hurrah. Lee Fuss. Now Japan have dropped price for Vita by 20% already due to slow sales. What will be done to attract UK customers? That isn't official.
It's not an official price.
A retailer thing, I think.
Some retailers in Japan have decided to chop it a little bit. So make of that what you will. Over here, though, Sony has been incredibly bullish about its UK sales projections. Jim Ryan, who's the head of Sony PlayStation business in Europe, told TV's Johnny Minkley that he expects Vita to sell more units at launch than PSP did in the UK, which maybe people who don't remember the circumstances are like, well, so what? Well, the PSP, when it came out, because the launch of PSP in UK was so late, it was in September after it had come out in the previous December. You and 185,000 people bought it at launch, which makes it the most successful UK console launch ever. And Jim Ryan reckons that Vita will do better than that. So they obviously think that they're going to do quite well. And I actually, when I read this question, because I saw these questions in advance, I actually thought, well, I don't really know what they're going to do. So I asked the marketing manager of PlayStation Vita in the UK to tell me what the hell he was going to do to get people to buy this goddamn thing.
What are you going to do, man?
I know. So I'm not going to quote him verbatim, but I can give you an indication. He says they will target gamers primarily. Good first start. But it sounds silly, but actually, I'm aware that previously the marketing campaign was probably going to be broader, and you can imagine that they were probably going to press on a lot of the other functions. I mean, Sony's thing for PlayStation 3 in America has been it only does everything, as in movies, TV, music, the works, etc. But they're going after gamers with Vita, and their thing, which I think is probably a good play, is saying that it's got the ability to deliver PS3 quality-ish gaming experiences on the go, along with massive titles that everyone's heard of, like Uncharted, Little Big Planet, Resistance, etc., which is probably going to be quite compelling for a lot of people in the West, at least, even though it hasn't been in Japan particularly. And in terms of what they're going to do to try and catch your attention with it, Leafus, they're going to have, and I love this, a strong digital backbone.
A strong digital backbone?
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
So they're going to do lots of adverts, basically, on the internet, on television, and outdoors.
Outdoors.
Do you know, I love that expression, though, in advertising. Yeah, we're going to do lots of outdoors. That basically means the big effing banners that you see when you're on your commute and you go past on a bus or whatever.
Not a guy with a sandwich board going PlayStation Vita sale this way.
That's more of a clamshell thing, really, isn't it? The sandwich board. Anyway, and they're going to do lots of sampling, which is to say that you'll they'll be putting it into people's hands. They're going to do that.
They're running events this month, actually.
Yes, in Manchester, Glasgow, and London during January and February, and apparently this kicks off in Manchester on January 12th. So
there you go.
That's it. They're going to tell gamers to get it by putting loads of adverts up and making them play it.
Good, solid plan.
Yeah, comprehensive answer.
Yeah, detailed. You went the extra mile for that one.
The extra phone call.
Sebastian Long, can we learn anything about the PlayStation 4 from the Vita?
This is a good question, and it's very hard to answer. Probably not really. I mean, the interface is different to PS3, but I don't know whether that means anything. I mean, it's clearly designed for a touch interface. It probably would work well with a pad anyway, but who knows? I like the interface on Vita. I think smart TVs in future are probably going to have something fairly similar to the kind of Apple-driven, Android-evolved, multi-screen apps as blobs thing that everyone seems to do these days. So I wouldn't be surprised if it becomes the norm for consoles as well. Trophies are still in there. Remote play's in there. There'll be lots of connectivity, sharing, multimedia bollocks. This is really riveting analysis. And I also think that Sony, this is my personal opinion, will probably stick with the form of physical media for PS4, maybe even just Blu-ray again. But the fact that Vita has day and date digital releases for every game is a significant breakthrough for consoles. And if that's repeated for PlayStation 4, a home console where all the games are at your fingertips on Friday morning as soon as they come out, rather than having to wait a few days.
£20 more expensive.
Exactly, and as long as they're reasonably priced, that could be quite a big deal. I imagine those are strategic moves that will continue on into PlayStation 4 if and whenever that happens. But in terms of obvious stuff just from using it, I don't think there's anything major there.
Fair enough.
It would be quite nice if the pads had rear touch, though. I'm quite taken with rear touch.
Are you really? Are you making a lot of use of that?
Not really. No. I mean, it's used in a few things. Touch My Katamari has this thing where you can flatten the Katamari out into a sort of rolling pin shape, or you can squelch it up into a sort of wheel, like a tall wheel, by doing a sort of pinch movement on the back or on the front, actually. But it's most comfortable on the back, so that's some fairly advanced rear touching, and I would not be averse to seeing that in a home controller.
Wonderful. Well, final questions from Jam Sponge, and he asks, was ist Ihre Meinung von Sony Vita?
I think what she actually asked was, was ist Ihre Meinung von Sony Vita?
Wow.
Yes.
Wonderful.
What is your opinion of the PlayStation Vita, basically?
Yeah.
Well, I reviewed it and I said I think it's a wonderful gaming handheld. I think that, basically. The second analog stick makes such a huge difference. It's one of the least interesting things in a way about the Vita. It's got some analog sticks, but it turns out when you get it, it's the most important thing.
Right.
It just means that you can play proper games properly, and that that shouldn't be underestimated. So Nintendo even knows this, judging by the fact that they're having to scar their handheld with a ridiculous, stupid, hanging off add-on thing less than a year after they released it. The Circle Slider Pro. So I do think that that's really vitally important. And the interface and controls generally are really nice. The screen is a bit smudgy. It doesn't seem to have the same kind of magic voodoo that high-end smartphones have, which prevent the accumulation of smudges, which means that you spend quite a lot of time buffing it. But then again, you do that with iPads and so on as well, so it's not terribly big deal. And the screen is really bright and vibrant, so you generally don't notice it too much, except on bright sunny days, of which there are relatively few in January or indeed February. The early games are, I guess, a mixture of promising and good. So your mileage varies on that one, and I think it will struggle to be commercially successful in spite of all that, because the market conditions are just mental, really, with so many different things competing for people's money and so little money available for people to spend on stuff because of the global economic bollocks.
Yeah, what did you think about the drop-off of sales from week 1 to week 2, I think, in Japan?
Well, I wasn't terribly surprised, because they haven't really released any games that are compelling to Japanese gamers. And also, Japanese gamers have just been massively screwed over by the Nintendo 3DS a year previously. I mean, if you're the sort of consumer in Japan, and also Japanese consumer culture doesn't lend itself to the sort of the same. It doesn't have the same kind of games journalism that we have in the West. It doesn't have the same kind of journalism that we have in the West. So people's awareness of this stuff is generally is done in quite a different way. I think they had all the same problems. Like people didn't really know why it was different to PSP. It didn't have a lot of the games they were looking for. They already had their fingers burnt by 3DS. Between those things, I wasn't surprised at all, really. I imagine, but I think you can also learn from the 3DS that it doesn't take that much in order to get things fixed again. You just need the right software and the right marketing. Nintendo seems to have turned it around by getting Pokemon and particularly Monster Hunter, and by doing this Circle Pad Pro slider bollocks thingy, raccoon, whatever. So the
Sony, Monster Hunter aspect shouldn't be underplayed. I mean, that's a massive
that is a massive game. Sony, however, won't have to iterate their handheld, as far as I can see, in terms of hardware. In the first year, that would be that. I just don't see any need for that. It's a really, really good device.
Yeah.
So really, all they've got to worry about is software and price. And as long as they can bring through some software, then those devices can still be sold in 6 months' time, can't they? I don't think that £300, considering that's what you have to spend to get the Vita, a memory card and a game.
Yeah, me personally, I would go for the Wi-Fi unit.
That's a bit mental.
And
you really need a memory card as well, which I think is really stop nickel and diming people for this shit, Sony, for fuck's sake. I do find that particularly offensive because it's like they can't afford to not take every chance that's in front of them. They can't afford to put people off when it's already a huge ask to get people to pay for it in the first place. Why on earth they would have a thing where you have to pay an additional 15 to 30 to 50 quid to just store save games on the bloody thing? I mean, it's not 2004 anymore. Even if they just had 512 meg of onboard memory, is that such a ridiculous thing to ask? Anyway, I think, as ever, rational people should wait for the games they want and then make a value judgment when it hits that tipping point for them personally. And I think irrational, neophile lunatics like myself should just buy it immediately.
Buy 10.
Buy 10. And you can then rub its tummy and sort of coo over it and bring it everywhere, and you'll love it. It's a really nice piece of kit. But yeah, it's a bit of a conflicted situation.
Well, we shall see what happens next month with the European launch. Mm-hmm. But I guess that just about wraps it up.
Yeah.
You've got any final?
I've run out of words. I've run out of breath.
We are spent.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's it. Thank you very much for taking the time to send us your questions. I hope this has been helpful.
There were some really good questions, actually.
Yeah,
I thought we got through a lot of interesting stuff.
I was impressed by the volume, but also the variety of questions.
Diversity was really, really important in this podcast.
Vital, absolutely vital. Well, thank you very much, Tom Bramwell.
You're welcome, Tom Champion.
And we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.